The Pacific holds secrets, but none is as electrifying as that of Amelia Earhart. For 87 years, her disappearance has been aviation's greatest unanswered question, a legend that ended in silence in the middle of the vastness. Today, we are going to travel 5,000 meters below the surface to witness the exact moment when an expert not only found the legendary Lockheed Electra 10E, but something that completely rewrites the history of her last flight. Prepare for the truth that shocked the world. Amelia Earhart did not disappear. She became a myth. Her final flight, conceived in 1937 to circumnavigate the globe along the equatorial line, is perhaps the most enduring mystery story of the 20th century. On July 2, 1937, the American aviator and her experienced navigator, Fred Noonan, took off from Lae, New Guinea, aboard their modified twin-engine Lockheed Electra 10E. Their destination was Howland Island, a tiny dot in the middle of the vast Pacific, which served as a refueling point before continuing their triumphant journey back to Oakland, California. They never arrived. Their last known communication was a distressed series of radio transmissions to the United States Coast Guard cutter, the Itasca, near Howland, in which they reported being on the line 157-337, out of fuel and unable to locate them, then silent. This silence has been the canvas on which generations of historians, treasure hunters, and dreamers have painted their own conclusions. For almost 9 decades, the Earhart mystery has generated 2 main theories. The crash and sink theory, which holds that the Electra ran out of fuel and quickly sank into the depths of the Pacific near Howland, and the Nikumaroro survival theory, formerly Gardner Island, an uninhabited atoll about 600 kilometers southeast, where they supposedly landed and survived for a while, leaving behind artifacts that have been the subject of scientific debate. The truth, however, remained buried in the secret of the ocean, a secret guarded by abyssal currents and the relentless pressure of darkness. The human and financial cost of solving this enigma has been monumental. The United States Navy and Coast Guard launched the most extensive and costly search in aviation history up to that time, but the technology of the 1930s was insufficient to penetrate the immensity of the Pacific. The trail went cold, and Earhart was legally declared dead in 1939. However, interest never waned. From the 1980s, with the rise of deep-sea archaeology and satellite navigation, the search resumed with renewed scientific intensity. High-profile expeditions, such as those carried out by TIGHAR, the International Group for Historic Aircraft Recovery, have extensively explored Nikumaroro and the surrounding waters, but without ever finding the irrefutable proof, the aircraft. This brings us to the modern search and the anchor point of our story. Current technology has allowed private companies, such as Deep Sea Vision, DSV, to equip vessels with advanced side-scan sonar, capable of mapping the seabed with astonishing precision. In January of 2024, DSV announced a finding that reignited the embers of the mystery. A sonar anomaly on the Pacific seabed, at about 500,000 meters deep, whose shape unequivocally suggested the silhouette of a twin-engine plane. The location of the anomaly, west of Howland Island, and in the area where Earhart is believed to have last communicated, was tantalizing. Nevertheless, as the press itself rightly pointed out at the time, the answer to the mystery of Amelia Earhart's lost plane would have to wait. Visual confirmation and, more importantly, recovery would require another expedition, more costly, more complex, and technologically more demanding. The world held its breath, but the final proof was pending. The follow-up expedition was not long in coming. Backed by a coalition of private sponsors and government agencies, the verification mission was nicknamed Final Flight. The Deep Sea Vision team, in collaboration with the Abyssal Archaeology Institute, deployed a state-of-the-art remotely operated vehicle, ROV, christened Odyssey, capable of withstanding the immense pressure of the abyss depths. The person at the head of the mission was Dr. Ilara Vance, a forensic oceanographer whose reputation was based on the cold logic of evidence as opposed to the sentimentality of legend. Dr. Vance and her team positioned themselves over the exact point of the anomaly. The silence in the control center of the research vessel was almost palpable, broken only by the monotonous beeping of the sonars and the humming of the life support systems. After an endless 5-hour dive, as the Odyssey descended through the water column to more than 500,000 meters, the ROV's LED lights began to reveal a lunar landscape, the Abyssal Plain, a wasteland of sedimentary mud dotted with strange creatures adapted to eternal darkness. And then, on the main monitor, it happened. Slowly, emerging from the blackness like a ghost from another era, the unmistakable shape appeared. It was not a rock, nor a geological outcrop. It was the fuselage of a Lockheed Electra 10E. It was sitting almost vertically on the seabed, surprisingly intact despite the impact and fall. The two Pratt & Whitney engines, although detached from the wings, lay neatly on both sides. The registration number, blurred by sediment, was unmistakable, NR16020. They had found the Electra. But this, although monumental, was not the promised shock. The Electra was a metal coffin. The shock would come later, with what it contained. We are about to descend with the ROV Odyssey into the darkness, where Amelia Earhart's Electra has remained hidden for decades. The confirmation of the plane is only the beginning. If Amelia's mystery has kept you glued to the screen until now, imagine what a sealed diary recovered from the depths will reveal about her last 3 days. Don't move, because the truth that Dr. Vance will unveil is only a few seconds away. But first, if you are enjoying this immersion in history, hit the like button and leave us a comment guessing. Courage or desperation? The Odyssey, piloted with a surgeon's touch by Dr. Kaito Tanaka, approached the right side of the fuselage. The windows were broken, but the interior, protected from oxygen and violent currents, had been preserved in a state of submarine stasis. Dr. Vance ordered the riskiest maneuver, introducing the ROV's articulated arm through the cockpit opening. The initial objective was to recover any artifact that could confirm the plane's identity and the immediate cause of the accident. A fragment of the instrument panel was extracted, a sealed speed gauge that showed a reading of 0. This confirmed a ditching or vertical fall, but did not reveal the final mystery. Dr. Vance, driven by a hunch that bordered on the irrational, ordered the robotic arm to focus on the area behind the navigator's seat, where emergency supplies were stored. After several minutes of meticulous work, the arm emerged with a small, cylindrical, mud-covered object, a metal cylinder approximately 30 centimeters long, with screw closures clearly designed to be airtight. It was not part of the aircraft. It was a survival container. The moment of the cylinder's opening in the surface laboratory was broadcast live and watched by billions. When the technicians managed to unscrew the sealed cap, the smell of 87-year-old stale air flooded the room. Inside, protected by a layer of oiled cloth, there was no gold or secret war map. There was something much more valuable, a small leather-bound logbook and a navigation case belonging to Fred Noonan. The case contained a sextant and a series of navigation charts, crucially with handwritten annotation. The contents of the logbook were the authentic historical bombshell. The text, written with a firm but exhausted hand, was Amelia Earhart's handwriting. The last known radio entries by the Itasca marked the end of communication on July 2, 1937. The diary, however, continued. The entry for July 3, 1937 began with a chilling statement. "We managed to ditch. Noonan did a miraculous job. The sea is calm, but the fuselage is slowly giving way. The radios are dead. We are alive." The shock was global and immediate. This was not a simple crash and sink. This was survival. The following entries, although intermittent, recounted the couple's 3-day struggle inside the floating fuselage, using the empty tanks to maintain precarious buoyancy and battling physical and mental exhaustion. They detailed their efforts to use signal flares, which no one saw, and their final decision to abandon the aircraft when the water began to flood the cabin irrevocably. The most shocking finding was not the diary itself, but the last annotation. Dr. Vance and her team noticed that the last pages contained text written not with a pencil, but forcefully engraved with a metallic tool. A final message carved into the last page of already deteriorated paper, indicating the exact coordinates of their ditching and the moment they were sinking. But it was the final note that paralyzed the world. It was not a message of desperation, but of defiance and historical resignation. Amelia not only engraved the coordinates, but drew a small diagram, a simple schematic map of how they had secured the diary and the navigation case in the cylinder, tying it with a durable parachute cord to the radio. "If the metal travels, let my voice travel with it," the note said. It was not a navigation error. It was fate, but we fought to the end. Noonan is a hero. America, I did not forget you. The implication was tremendous. The expert had not found human remains in the traditional sense, but the remains of their will, the irrefutable evidence of a 3-day act of survival that defied the predominant theory of a rapid immersion. This discovery meant that Earhart and Noonan, despite their communication failures and fuel problems, managed to maintain control and execute a near-perfect emergency ditching. The shock resided in the fact that the aviator's legend had been transformed. From an ignominious tragedy due to error, to a final act of heroism and determination. The world reacted with a mixture of ecstasy and mourning. Dr. Vance, in her sober press conference, emphasized that the finding was a triumph of science and human perseverance, not just a stroke of luck. Noonan's navigation charts showed that his dead reckoning work had been almost impeccable, despite headwinds and the lack of modern instruments. They had been painfully close to Howland, but the weather, the haze, and the Itasca's miscalculation in not turning on the radio beacon in time sealed their fate. The diary and the navigation case, meticulously preserved by the Abyss, were transferred to Washington, D.C., and exhibited under rigorous security measures. The Lockheed Electra, now converted into an underwater monument, was exhaustively documented and left in its place, a silent testament to the Pacific's ferocity. The cultural impact was instantaneous. History books were rewritten. Amelia Earhart was no longer the hero who mysteriously disappeared, but the tenacious pilot who, even after losing the battle against the elements, dedicated her last hours to ensuring that her truth would be known. Her final entry was more powerful than any radio transmission, an emotional time capsule that gave the world not only the answer to a geographical enigma, but the deep understanding of the mind of one of the great pioneers of the century. The final lesson of Amelia Earhart's story, confirmed by Dr. Vance in those remnants of paper and metal, was not about the tragedy of failure, but about the dignity of the struggle. The expert found what no one expected: Amelia's voice, clear and defiant, resonating from the depths, finally closing the horizon of uncertainty and shocking the world with the simple and powerful truth of her final survival. Thus, Amelia's voice, clear and firm, resonated from the depth, forever changing the narrative of her destiny. It is no longer a tragedy of error, but an epic act of final courage and survival. What do you think of this amazing twist in history? Let me know in the comments, and let's discuss the true legacy of this pioneer. If the mysteries of history fascinate you, don't forget to subscribe for more exclusive content, like the video if it has impacted you, and share it so that this truth reaches everyone. Until next time, explorers.